Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the absolutely most fascinating and impactful powers in human history, the Mughal Empire. We're going to explore a monumental 300-year legacy that completely fundamentally shaped an entire subcontinent. We're breaking it down step by step because we're looking at a legacy that quite literally forged modern South Asia, and honestly, it continues to echo through history today.
So, to start us off, think about this question. What early modern Islamic empire dominated the Indian subcontinent for over 300 years? I mean, just pause and think about the sheer, massive scale of that. We're talking about an era that spanned multiple centuries, bridging medieval traditions right into the modern world, and fundamentally reshaping the entire destiny of South Asia. And the answer to that, of course, is the subject of our deep dive today.
Section 1. The scale of power.
You know, when we talk about historical empires, it is so incredibly easy to lose our sense of true scale. We really need to grasp the massive historical weight of this empire before we look at anything else. So, the absolute crucial point to remember is 300. That is over 3 centuries of absolute dominance. To put that into perspective, that's significantly longer than the United States has even existed as an independent nation. Just imagine the generational shifts, the evolution of society, the sheer volume of lived human experience that number represents. This wasn't just some brief reign or a temporary occupation by a foreign power. No, this was a deeply entrenched period of rule that allowed for some massive, systemic roots to take hold. Let's see how this builds across a precise timeline. The foundation of the empire was laid back in the pivotal year of 1526. And from that starting point, they maintained dominance over the Indian subcontinent for more than 3 centuries, eventually coming to an official end in 1858. Now, when you look at those historical bookends, 1526 and 1858, you are literally watching the world fundamentally transform. It goes from the early modern period, which was an era defined by the rise of newly gunpowder-equipped armies and armored cavalry, right up to the doorstep of the contemporary era, the dawn of the Industrial Revolution and the formal establishment of the British Raj.
But who actually sparked this incredible timeline? Who was the catalyst? Well, it was Babur. Babur was a Central Asian ruler with an absolutely unbelievable pedigree. He traced his direct lineage back to legendary conquerors like Timur and Genghis Khan. And he was the one who crossed immense geographical boundaries, sweeping down from the Fergana Valley in what we now know as modern-day Uzbekistan, bringing with him a very distinct vision. A vision to establish what would eventually become the mighty Mughal Empire in South Asia. He is the true starting point of this whole 300-year journey we're tracking today.
Moving on to Section 2, a blended culture.
So, the question naturally arises, right? How does a single ruler from Central Asia manage to establish a dynasty that shaped South Asia so profoundly for over 3 centuries? Now, what's really interesting here is this concept of the ultimate cultural recipe. The Mughal Empire didn't just strictly impose a single way of life from the top down. Actually, scratch that. It was more like a giant cultural melting pot. It was essentially a unique amalgamation of very different worldly influences, all cooking together over generations.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what went into that recipe. Let's break down these distinct ingredients. First up, we have Persian influence, which deeply, deeply shaped the empire's courtly culture. It made Persian the official language of administration, high art, and poetry. Then, we mix in Turkish influence, which brought advanced military cavalry tactics and these really rich Central Asian nomadic traditions. And finally, we have Indian influence, integrating local Rajput political alliances, indigenous art forms, and deep-rooted agricultural systems. When Babur and his successors wove these elements together, they didn't just tolerate their differences, they totally synthesized them. It even birthed entirely new forms of communication. Take Urdu, for example, a beautiful camp language literally born from soldiers and administrators of diverse backgrounds just needing to communicate with one another in the bazaars and forts. It created something entirely new and uniquely Mughal.
Which brings us to Section 3, the lasting legacy.
When a cultural recipe stews for over 300 years, it leaves an enduring footprint. The impact was, in a word, profound. The empire didn't just vanish into thin air when it formally ended in 1858. The systemic and cultural integration was so incredibly deep that it permanently transformed the entire region. It created these massive ripples that actually still dictate daily life across the subcontinent today.
Let's look closely at exactly where those echoes are most visible right now. First, enduring art. We're talking intricate miniature paintings that masterfully blended formal Persian techniques with vibrant Indian colors and themes. Second, famous cuisine. Think about the incredibly rich, complex culinary traditions like biryani and rich kormas. Those were quite literally born in the imperial kitchens, combining Central Asian meats with local Indian spices. Third, iconic architecture. I mean, think of the majestic Taj Mahal or the imposing Red Fort in Delhi. Buildings that completely redefine the built environment of the entire subcontinent. And finally, foundational administrative and revenue systems. Frameworks like the Mansabdari system actually structured the governance, taxation, and military ranking of the region long after the empire fell. If you're a focused learner studying South Asia today, you are absolutely interacting with these exact Mughal elements.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to consider. Which Mughal legacy, art, cuisine, architecture, or administrative systems do you think shaped South Asia the most today? It's just truly amazing to realize that an early modern Islamic empire, founded by a Central Asian ruler way back in 1526, still prompts such a complex and relevant question in our modern world. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating history. Keep looking closely at the world around you, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.